What would happen if the United States were to magically disappear? Well, the effects would be unbelievably far-reaching. It would completely and utterly reshape the planet physically, politically, and financially. But who would suffer and who would thrive? What would a new world look like? And who would replace the power vacuums left behind? In this hypothetical scenario, we will remove everything American, ranging from the people to its land to even its companies like McDonald's. So we've now snapped our fingers and removed the United States of America. This is how our new world looks. So we have just removed over 9.1 million kilometers squared of land from Earth. That's roughly 6% of all of Earth's land. We've also lost around 347 million people. That's just over 4% of all humans on the planet. Indonesia now becomes the third most populated country in the world behind India and China. So first things first, let's first dissect the physical changes that have now occurred. So Canada has now become an island. Its southern border now sits on the coast, with the eastern parts of the country touching the Atlantic and the western the Pacific. The US is Canada's biggest trading partner, so of course it would be detrimental to the Canadian economy. However, where Canada would benefit from is its newly opened ocean access. The border between the US and Canada to the south spans nearly 9,000 kilometers, granting Canada a vast new stretch of coastline. This would significantly enhance the country's trading opportunities, especially considering that many of its major cities such as Winnipeg, Montreal, Toronto, and the capital Ottawa are located not far from this newly accessible coastline. With Canada losing one of their biggest allies, who happens to be perhaps the most powerful country on Earth, it would lose a huge margin of security and safety in terms of global power. However, with it now becoming an island, land invasions are now no longer possible, so it's not all doom and gloom for the Canadians. A similar story applies to Mexico, who now no longer has a land border to its north. Unlike Canada, however, Mexico does not become an island. Again, just like Canada, the US is Mexico's biggest trading partner, with an incredible 75% of exports going to the US alone, meaning Mexico's economy would likely collapse. But after a few decades of turmoil, Mexico might see some new benefits from its newly gained ocean access. Like Canada, this opens new trading routes and options. With the removal of the US, Mexico, and Canada for that matter, can now use the space where the US once existed to drill for resources and fish, potentially boosting their economies. It's hard to argue against the fact that the US is quite easily the most powerful country on Earth. In 2023, the US's military spending was $916 billion US. That's roughly the same as the 9 next countries combined, or 37% of all military spending on the planet. Now, if the US were to magically disappear, then this would leave a gigantic power vacuum in many different regions. It would severely weaken NATO and, to be honest, any alliance that the Americans are part of. Rivals of the US like Russia and China would immediately gain an advantage, with probably China becoming the world's new superpower. Its military spending, size, population, and economy would be impossible for anyone to compete with. Countries that are heavily sanctioned and held down by the US would also be very happy with them ceasing to exist. NATO and the EU, well, Europe as a whole, have now lost their most powerful member and ally, leading to huge anxiety across the continent. This would likely result in NATO pouring significantly more resources into the alliance. China could invade Taiwan, and Russia could use military force to regain territories such as the Baltics. With the US disappearing, the countries of Latin America are no longer overshadowed. They may see this as their chance to prevail. It's likely that Brazil would win this charge due to its size, population, and economy being by far the largest in the region. It would now compete with Canada as the Western Hemisphere's most powerful nation. Without the watchful eye of the Americans, North Korea may continue and in fact substantially invest into its nuclear program. It may see the loss of America as an opportunity to even invade South Korea whenever it likes, or at least gain some power over them. The world of technology would also crumble in the event of losing America. At the time of making this video, 8 of the 10 most valuable companies on Earth are from the US, with the likes of Apple, Microsoft, and Meta having quite literally billions of users around the world. Rough estimates suggest that up to 70% of the world use products from these three companies alone. Losing them would cause absolute chaos. Similar to military power, this would leave a huge vacuum where companies likely from Europe or China would seek to become the new tech overlords. Now, losing the US also means we lose Hollywood and its studios. The US is believed to be responsible for up to 30% of the global film industry revenue. Now, this is a vacuum where probably China couldn't gain dominance due to the fact that most Chinese movies are in Mandarin, which isn't too widely spoken outside of the country. With the United Kingdom having a pretty solid entertainment industry, it could potentially snatch the crown from the Americans. Now, it isn't just the film industry, but pretty much every industry on Earth that's dominated by America, ranging from fashion brands to music, and of course, the thing that it is the king of, fast food. Losing America and everything American means the world loses a lot of its fast food choices. Out of the top 20 biggest fast food brands by number of stores, the US is responsible for 16 of them. Quite interestingly, however, they don't have the number one position, who belongs to Mixue Ice Cream and Tea from China. Now, in this scenario, if we lose the US, we lose its currency and economy too, which would be astronomically catastrophic. At the time of making this video, the US economy accounts for roughly a quarter of the world's GDP. Its sudden absence would lead to a massive economic collapse, disrupting trade, financial markets, and supply chains, especially to its biggest trading partners. With its removal, China now becomes the world's largest economy, accounting for just a little under a quarter of the global GDP at the time of making this video. Now, the dollar isn't just the currency of the United States, it's the backbone of global trade. Countries all around the world use the dollar for transactions, and central banks hold it as a reserve to keep their economies stable. There are also 11 countries around the world who use it as their official currency. Without the dollar, global markets would be thrown into turmoil. Nations would scramble to find a new currency to rely on, creating massive uncertainty. But which currency would replace the dollar? Well, my guess is the euro, as so many countries already use it, and it's the second most traded currency on Earth. The Chinese would of course love it to be their own currency, which is gaining traction already. However, with the currency not being too favourable outside of China, it would likely be the euro. Without the US, there will be a significant drop in aid around the world. This is one thing that the US seriously excels at. In 2023, the US donated $9.4 billion in humanitarian aid around the world. That's about 36% of global spending. When it comes to total foreign aid, which includes military spending, this figure was $66 billion, with Ukraine receiving a quarter of that alone. Without this aid, Ukraine would likely not be able to hold off the Russian forces, leading to a Russian win in the war. Developing countries such as Ethiopia, Somalia, and South Sudan see sizable donations from the US, meaning without it, they'd likely see poverty levels rise. Now, one could argue that losing the US is a good thing due to its fossil fuel usage. The country is responsible for 12% of all CO2 emissions after all. However, the US is on the right trajectory. Its emissions have fallen by around 21% since the year 2000. It's not perfect, but it is heading in the right direction. Also, in losing the US, we lose around $93 or so billion that it invests yearly in renewable energy, alongside all the startups that are building products and technology to make the world and country a greener place. The US also produces around 11% of renewable energy on Earth, so by removing them, yes, we decrease emissions, but we lose a lot of positives too. So there are some of the things that could potentially happen if the US were to magically disappear. Which side of the fence are you on? Would losing America make the world a better or worse place? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe for more geography content, and as always, thank you very much for watching.